My name is Katharine Froehlich, and I'm your host for WMRA Books and Brews. And I just want to say, wow, it's been a year and a half since we have been in public spaces having this conversation. So thank you for coming out tonight. Thank you, Pale Fire, for bringing us back. Gaines Group for being a part of this, and have compassion for me because I think I still can't put my words together properly looking at people in the face versus the virtual. So we'll continue. I want to welcome tonight our neighbor, farmer and author Joel Salatin, who co-owns with his family Polyface Farm in Swope. Featured in the New York Times bestseller Omnivore's Dilemma and award-winning documentary Food, Inc. The farm services more than 5,000 families, 50 restaurants, online sales and farm store providing salad barred beef, pigerator pork, I'm using all Joel's words here, pastured poultry and forestry products. When Joel is not on the road speaking, which he just came back from Mississippi, he's at home on the farm, keeping the calluses on his hands and dirt under his fingernails. Mentoring young people and inspiring visitors, and promoting local regenerative food and farming systems. Joel is also editor of the Stockman Grass Farmer, a catalyst for the grass farming movement, and has written 15 books on food and farming. You can see that table is heavy over there. Tonight we will be talking about his two most recent books, Polyface Designs, which is up in the top corner there, and Polyface Micro, Success with Livestock on a Homestead Scale. Let's give a warm welcome to Joel Salatin. Now, Joel, before I forget, and I know my mother is maybe watching somewhere, are there turkeys still available for Thanksgiving?
I have to ask Wendy.
What?
Do we have turkey still available?
No,
She's shaking her head no.
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 We have 4.
We have 4 left? 4 turkeys left.
My mother needs that.
4 turkeys left. It's been a real run on them. We're not used to this kind of run, and the turkeys did really well this year. We raised more than we've ever have, but we've never had this kind of run on them this early. So it's
People are excited to get together.
yeah. Well, people are jittery about store shelves.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, supply chains and things like that, and so yeah, it's there's going to be people that don't get one. We're going to run out in a couple days.
You've made my Mother's Day. Thank you so much. Just a little bit. You've written a lot about food and farming, and as far as these books, really, what was your primary motivation and an audience for both Polyface Designs and the Polyface Micro?
Sure, thank you. It's a great question. So Polyface Designs grew out of we do all this mobile infrastructure. We've got egg mobiles and gobbledygos and Millennium feather nets and all sorts of things that are unconventional that we've designed and developed over the years. And people would always call us, do you have blueprints for this? How do I build this? And full transparency here, I can't draw a stick man. I mean, you do not want me to be your partner in Pictionary. Trust me. Like when it's a state, they all look the same. What is it? Well, there. It's a blob. But we had an apprentice 6-7 years ago who was a very, very successful mechanical engineer. He was working for a big Fortune 500 company, and was on the he was 30 and heading up the scale, and he just realized sitting there at his cubicle one day designing turbines. I think I'd like to be out mowing the lawn on that zero-turn mower more than sitting in his cubicle doing this. He contacted us, became an apprentice, Chris, and we had no idea that his whole time there. So he was he was looking like an engineer would look at this stuff, a design engineer would look at this stuff. And he overheard me more than once, this person would come in, you have drawings, no, I don't know how to draw, I can't do puzzles. When you were in grade school, you took those aptitude tests, and they had a drawing, and they'd say, what does F go into? Those kinds of things. I'm like 20 percentile. I mean, I can't do a puzzle. I just am not visual. But when I gave you the paragraph, I said, what's the best title of this paragraph? I was 99. So I'm verbal, I'm totally, so I'll tell you how to build it. I can give you word pictures, obviously, look at all those words, but I can't draw it. Well, Chris heard this conversation. He said, we need to do this. So he came to me a couple of years ago and said, let me do the broiler, the field broiler shelter. That's kind of basic. Let me do that. I said, well, if you're gonna do that, we might as well do the Millennium Feather Net and the Eggmobile and the Cow Shade Mobile and the Gobbly-Go and whoa, And he said, okay, I'm game. So he did the drawing, I did the text, kind of the introductory text and the why of it and that sort of thing. But he did the drawings. It's really his project. He spent one whole year on the project, and it's a magnificent book. Kids love it because it's like Legos. It's all the diagrams. I mean, you can take the parts list, go down to Lowe's and say, I want one of all these. It's got the lumber, the screws, the size of the screws, then it's got the tools you need, and it's just an amazing thing. And if you don't want to read it, it weighs 5 pounds. You can use it for weightlifting if you don't want to read it. So that was Polyface Designs, and it has sold fantastic. I mean, we're in our fourth reprinting right now. It's sold we're into the 30,000. Copies, and it's just selling, and it's an expensive book. It's huge. It's expensive to print, and it's hard to print because now the printing companies can't get paper. So here we are, stuck. So Polyface Micro. So that one, which is the most recent one, came out this year. About 4 months ago, and that one came out of. Back, 35 years ago, when I started speaking and doing presentations about, weird farming, I'd get done with the Kodak slides carousel, and I'd get done, and people would say, "Oh, that's sweet, that's warm and fuzzy, but how does it scale up?" Because we had, 20 cows, a couple thousand chickens, and we were just kind of there. Well, now, when I get done, now we have 1,000 cows, we do, 800 hogs, and, 40,000 chickens, and I get done, and people say, good grief, that's incredible, but I've only got 5 acres, how does it scale down? So I've lived in those, I have had feet in both of those worlds, kind of the glorified homestead, and now, the really a more scaled commercial operation. So I can easily do the math and think, between those two worlds. The average person can't. And so, in case you're not aware of it, we have a homestead tsunami going on in this country right now. People are leaving the cities. And if you try to buy something less than 10 acres right now, it's probably double price from what it was 18 months ago, and there's a real tsunami. And so I always write for what I'm hearing, for needs I'm hearing, and that was really a strong one. So
why do you or what do you hear from people as to why there is this tsunami? Why are people looking to go to the land or be more self-sufficient beyond the pandemic?
Right.
Or maybe even before that.
Yeah, I think there's a general, we saw it at Y2K, all right? That was one. And I call this Y2K on steroids. What I'm seeing. I lived through both of them. Well, I haven't lived through this one yet. I might not live through this one, but the kind of intuitive understanding right now, I think, is if things are going to go down, if things are going to go wonky, I don't want to be stuck in the city. There's a certain resilience, a certain security, safety. If I can grow some tomatoes, if I can catch water off a roof, if I can, have a little greenhouse, a cold frame, season extension, pantry full of my own vegetables, have a compost pile. If I can do some of that, I can to that extent, I can disentangle myself from the system. And that's not a partisan statement, it just is. There's a lot of unsettledness. You have to have your head in the sand to think that we don't live in a time of unsettledness. And so I think that's what's driving it. Goodness, Wendy, raise your hand. My brains is right there. She's holding her hand. Wendy. If you call Polyface, she's the one that answers the phone, and she keeps me straight and honest and keeps us out of jail and all those kinds of things. But I think she would confirm that. In the last 2 months, we've probably had 20 couples through the farm that are like California refugees.
There were 5 today.
5 today. 5 today.
Separate, not together. They different times.
Yeah, and many of them
looking for property.
And many of them are in RVs.
Yeah.
They've fled their urban place. They're in an RV traveling, trying to find a place, and it's real.
So what are the most important considerations that people need to unpack to be able to make this kind of a shift? Land, you bring it up in the book, you talk about a lot of different things, and you love lists. I love your lists. They're great.
Yeah, I do like lists because there's something about both points, where you can, you're more agile than I am. There is, we like checklists, check, we like to go off. And I think one of the biggest things is to when you make that move, don't make a move based on fear, make a move based on faith. If you make all your decisions because you're running away from something, it'll never pan out as well as if you make your decisions saying, I'm looking for something better. So that's the first thing. The second thing is to make sure that you don't throw all of your nest egg into the land, the house, the whatever. Keep some capitals for some road building, pond building, cistern building, equipment building, infrastructure, a sawmill, tools, things like that. And a real common issue is people try to buy as big a place as they can and lose all their nest egg. Now they've lost their capital, and they can't actually develop the property, this their dream property, because they've spent all their capital on it.
And your book really focuses on livestock on the homestead scale. So why are the animals so much an important part of the plan?
Well, the animals are really critical because they carry real-time nutrition. A chicken lays an egg every day. A cow makes milk every day. One of the reasons that nomadic cultures, a lot of cultures around the world, they don't measure wealth based on how many watermelons or watermelons. Stuck on watermelons, but how much squash you have. Wealth is based on animals, livestock, especially many shepherd-type, nomadic-type cultures. And the reason is because that's nutrition on the hoof. The chickens and the cows that went on the Oregon Trail with those early settlers, often that 1 cup of milk kept the infant alive. And it didn't need refrigeration. It didn't need electricity, and the cow could live on grass, which you didn't even have to plant. And so the animals offer this real-time, ongoing nutrition. They upscale stuff. I mean, you know, grass is the #1 efficient solar collector, converting solar energy into carbon and into biomass, more efficient than trees, more efficient than bushes and shrubs. But we can't eat grass. But a ruminant can eat grass and convert it into something very nutritious: lamb, shelling, beef, whatever. The omnivores historically were salvage operations. That's why you had the pig pen and the chicken house, you know, next to the curtilage. The curtilage is a legal term of, you know, the house of and everything close to it. And because your dairy waste, your sour milk, your vegetable scraps, peelings, you know, grape pumice from winemaking, you know, all of those things, apple rinds from cider making, all that stuff could go to the pigs and the chickens, to the omnivores, and none of this stuff went to the landfill. And so, you know, those tight, the self-reliant homestead, the idea is that the idea is to reduce the amount of energy going in and reduce the amount of waste going out. So everything cycles on site, and you have a little bit coming in and just a tiny leak going out, but not much. That's the idea. And so when you close these loops, whether it's worm beds or chickens eating the kitchen scraps, you know, things like that, when you close these loops, you begin to develop this kind of self-reliant resilience.
And you're so kind to those who are looking at that with this book, with also going over these pitfalls, you know, these common pitfalls. And I just wondered if tonight you could share with us maybe a story that I'm imagining you learned these lessons the hard way.
Oh yeah. I think in the book, my first pitfall is control. And yes, we've learned that the hard way. Listen, if you are going to go get an animal and you don't have your infrastructure ready, it's the wrong time to buy the animal. You get your stuff together, especially big things like cows. They can cover a lot of ground in a hurry, and you can bring this nice gentle cow, but she's in a strange place, hearing strange voices with strange people that might be a little bit intimidated and scared, and that gentle cow is now stressed, and a stressed cow can make tracks, and she can be in the next county in about 20 minutes. And you will have the fire department, the state police, the police, every sheriff's two deputies, and all the neighbors and all the farmers, and trying to get this stressed cow. So don't get the cow until you have a corral that can hold the cow. We have in the past, we've actually lost calves that just AWOL and never could find them. I'm gone. I mean, through the woods, up through the Game Commission, out through Craigsville, and to West Virginia. I mean, you know, gone. So I speak from experience. You know, drop them in a corral first. Get them settled down. You know, let them know your voice and know that you're their friend, and give them some nice clean hay, clean water. You know.
You mentioned
control.
Control. I have seen a farmer chase a pig before.
Yeah. You just can't believe. You know, that's the beauty of vegetables. You know, vegetables don't run away. I've never chased a tomato plant down. I mean, they just stay there. But boy, I'll tell you, pigs, cows, chickens, lambs. I mean, they just. You see the tails going over the hillside. You know. Another big pitfall is not getting water infrastructure set up, and so what happens is, and I know people come to homesteading not as a commercial efficiency venture, but if you're working in town, if you're trying to do the homestead and keep your job, whether it's working from home or working away from home, you still need to think about efficiency. And so carrying water is really inefficient. We have this wonderful invention. It's called water pipe. And it's not very expensive. There are three things in my book that are great to use petroleum for. One is for plastic for solariums, like hoop houses and solariums on the side of houses, a season extension. Number two is water pipe. And number three is to feed an excavator to dig ponds. Those are three really viable uses of petroleum in my book. And probably, at the end of the day, if there's only 1 gallon of gas left on the planet, it needs to go through a chainsaw. I mean, that's probably the final destination of the last gallon of gas on the planet is a chainsaw. But water, so what I see, and I've been on, hundreds if not thousands of homesteads all over the world, and when I see people just spending, half an hour a day carrying water out into the field to places that could easily just have a water line run out there, that's a pitfall. Because it takes up all your time. Then you don't have time. You don't have time to build the corral right, to build the fence right, to do the other things that you want to do.
You make it easy for us. Thank you for sharing your wisdom on that. We see an increasing kind of curve of understanding about soil fertility and how important it is not only to the farm, but to our health and to our civilization thriving. And I just wanted you to speak a little bit about what you've learned about soil fertility over the last 60 years at your farm in Polyface.
Yeah, 60 years. Well, we've been there that long, haven't we? Yeah. So one of the thing that makes me weep is to now go out the back door and remember as a child being able to walk the whole farm, and it was so barren. I as a little child, 5, 6 years old, I could walk the entire place and never set foot on a piece of vegetation. There was that much bare ground. We had gullies 10, 12 feet deep. The deepest one was 16 feet. So imagine twice the depth of this ceiling right here, 16 feet. You know how much soil that is? We have rock places, bigger than this room. They're always oval, kind of shale rock, no soil, no weeds, no vegetation. It's just bare shale rock, where we lost 3 to 8 feet of topsoil since European settlement. And so today, they're all healed. There's no more erosion. Those rocks have 12 inches of soil over top of them that has just grown over time. And so to see it go from where we could hardly feed 10 cows to feeding 100 cows on the same ground, places where we'd make a windrow for hay, and you'd make 16 rake swaths across, as wide as this room is long to make one little chintzy windrow, and now one swath you can't step over. I'm not bragging. I'm giving credence to an incredible agronomic redemptive process that has its basis in carbon. It's all about carbon. Whether it's the pruned off roots of the plants that the animals are eating and pruning, and then the plant sloughs off roots to mirror, to create bilateral symmetry at the soil horizon between the root and the crown and the top of the plant, what you see, or whether it's, we have an industrial chipper, so we do a lot of work in the woods and taking crooked and dead and junk trees, chipping those and using those as bedding for the animals when they're in the winter, in the hoop houses and in the hay shed feeding areas and stuff. And then we use pigerators to make the compost aerated instead of expensive compost turner machines. So pigerators do the aeration and turn into aerobic compost. And so that year after year after year shepherding and leveraging of both the unseen and the seen carbon from composting and that sort of thing is what has driven the soil fertility. So that now in the 1960s, when we took the first soil samples, we averaged a little less than 1% organic matter. Today we average over 8% organic matter. And of course, organic matter it's the tilth, it's the softness, it's the sponge of the soil. It's also the buffer for pathogens and toxins and things like that. And that's what feeds the microbiological, the mycelia, the actinomycetes, the gibberellins in the soil. They're feeding on this decaying organic matter. And so I talk in the book a lot about not buying 10-10-10 chemical fertilizer, and even not even buying organic fertilizer. But what can we look around your homestead? What are sources of carbon that you can utilize and develop on your property?
And building that kind of soil in 60 years is, if Mother Nature was doing it, would be a lot longer.
Yeah, the rule of thumb in our, every region, the climate has a lot to do with how fast soil builds. It builds slower in Nevada, okay? It builds faster in, Raven Gap, Georgia, 100 inches of rainfall a year. But around here, generally, the thought is that it takes, somewhere upwards of 500 years to build an inch of soil. And so yeah, it's a really slow process. A lot of places, 1,000 years. When Sir Albert Howard wrote an agricultural testament, which was he was kind of the godfather of the whole sustainable ag movement in 1943. An agricultural testament, that's still the soil Bible among people like me. He had a statement in there. He said every civilization tries to take what nature spent 1,000 years to create and turn it into cash. That's the tempting. And of course, the problem is when you measure a nation's wealth or economic activity based on nothing more than gross domestic product. Gross domestic product has no negative balance sheet. So the cost of cleaning up a polluted river, the cost of rehabilitating a juvenile delinquent, the cost of a jail, the cost of any of those kinds of Superfund cleanup sites, all those costs are seen as positive GDP. There's no negative. And so it belies the question, how long can a culture survive when it has no way to capture the cost of sin, of evil, of bad things? Okay, we don't capture those costs, and they're not captured, at the Kroger checkout register from a Tyson chicken. They're certainly not captured there, and so as a result, we just don't have a way to measure those kinds of things. But yet, I think all of us would agree that the ultimate health and wealth of our culture has more to do with the health and happiness of earthworms than Wall Street. But you don't see it on a business plan. The banker doesn't ask you, how's the earthworm account going today? They don't ask you that, right?
I'm wondering what the measurement would be. I don't want to know. We're going to open up to questions. I have plenty, and this is packed, chapter by chapter on so many things. But we'll open up for questions from you all. If I can see past these lights.
What's
your thoughts on humanure as an adjunct to this whole process?
Yeah, humanure. Humanure, for those of you that aren't aware, that means human. That's a short way to say human manure. Yes. And there again, Sir Albert Howard, 1943, an agricultural testament. I mean, that's a book that should be on every single nightstand, in my opinion, or bookshelf at least. And he said in 1943, he said within about 10 years, the whole world is going to see the folly of water-based sewage systems. Because it impoverishes the landscape. It impoverishes the land because you're not returning it back. And so his vision for the future, this is 1943, remember, was what he called diamond cities. So think about this. This guy, Sir Albert Howard, he was British, and spent his career in indoor India, and essentially he brought to the world in 1943 with an agricultural testament. He brought to the world a scientific formula for aerobic composting: nitrogen, oxygen, carbon, water, and microbes. 5 ingredients in the right proportions. And he said we need diamond cities. So what he envisioned was, imagine an acre with 25 houses in a diamond shape. That way every house had a southern exposure for passive solar heat, because no house blocked. In other words, are you with me? All right. So they're all just offset. All right. And then in the center of this diamond, each of those 25 households hires one master gardener who composts all their human manure, composts it. That drives the fertility for all of the food that they're going to eat. That 1 acre feeds those 25 households with their own generated waste, and there's no landfill, no sewage treatment, no piping, no utility, just a master gardener and 25 households with passive solar. Is that not cool? You know, that was 1943. You know, it didn't happen. I mean, the fact that we're still going out here building stick houses with no regard to aspect facing south, no regard to, you know, as long as you can pump it, pipe it, plug it, you know, it's amazing how little thought, how little intentionality goes into the foundations of our living. It really is. And I'm not here to throw a guilt trip on everybody. I'm guilty of it too. But it really is amazing how little we're thinking about that.
What do you think of, what are your thoughts on stockage rates of cattle and smaller frame cattle such as Aberdeen Angus, and increasing the number of head per acre?
Repeat the question. The question on stockage rates of cattle and
size, phenotype, body type.
Smaller size cattle,
okay,
such as low-lying.
Yeah, you know, so here, when we talk about cattle, and of course, you know, this is yours is a really specific question. Let me just say, for anybody here who thinks we should eliminate all cattle, that when you look at documentaries like, you know, Cowspiracy and What the Health, and, you know, the other ones that demonize cows, realize that all their data points are coming from a dysfunctional system, which is a feedlot grain-based system. A ruminant in nature doesn't eat very much seed, almost no seeds. Corn is a seed, by the way, or seed corn is a seed. Eating the whole plant, that's a different story. Those of us that do what I call mob stocking, herbivorous, solar conversion, lignified carbon sequestration, fertilization.
you can say that again.
So you don't have to do it. Mob stocking, herbivorous, solar conversion, lignified carbon sequestration, fertilization. If you can't remember it, you can get a T-shirt with that written on it from our gift store. When did we have to celebrate? Just so you can remember it. All right. So when you do that, so just so you understand, in nature, herbivores move, mow, and mob. Move, mow, and mob. They don't stay in the same place. They're mobbed up for predator protection, and they're mowing or pruning. Okay. The problem is that almost all cattle in the world violate at least one of those, and many times all 3 of those rules. And when you violate any one, you take an asset and turn it into a liability. Okay? So what we do is, using high-tech electric fence and water pipe, so we get water to them. We constrict the herd. Doesn't matter how big it is, 500. Biggest herd that we've run together is 720. That's a pretty big herd around here. And we constrict them to 1 day's area that they're going to eat. 1 day. We move them every single day to another paddock. And what that does is it allows us to greatly control just when the pruning is perfect to stimulate root biomass generation and the energy in the plant. I mean, read Salad Bar Beef. There's a whole book about it. Okay, so the point is that the animal that functions there well has a phenotype, a body size, a phenotype, and a look. Just like, look, if you go to Africa the biggest wild herds now in the world are the wildebeest in Africa, zebras, things like that. You look at a herd of those wildebeest, look at 1 million of them, right? There is a 20 pounds difference between the biggest one and the littlest one. Why? Because the big ones require too much energy and die in the heat, in the drought. The little ones are too small to fight off the jaguars and the lions. So there's a sweet spot. There's a phenotype that works in that ecosystem and makes them extremely homogeneous, all right? I mean, think about what running backs look like in football. They look pretty similar, don't they? What do centers look like in the NBA? They don't look like running backs in football. Okay? Phenotype matters. And so when we're filling these ecological niches, nature has sweet spots. As my mentor Alan Nation used to say, there's a reason why an elephant is the size an elephant is, and a mouse is the size of a mouse is. A mouse the size of an elephant wouldn't be a very successful mouse. And an elephant the size of a mouse wouldn't be a very successful elephant, right? And so what's happened over the last 40, 50 years is the meat fabrication industry, the processors have driven the genetics. When you're fabricating a carcass and you're taking a beef carcass and turning it into T-bone and ground beef and ribeye steaks, the bigger the carcass, the more efficient you're cutting because you're setting up that saw and you're getting more ribeyes. You're getting more, are you with me? You're getting more poundage, right? That has filtered back to the farm to where we now have Sherman tank cows that weigh 2,000 pounds, and the whole industry rewards size, which is exactly opposite efficient pasture conversion of solar energy into nutrition. It's the opposite. So what we want are little cows. A lot of our cows are 950, 100,000 pounds. Little cows, okay? Little calves. They're not big steam engines that require tons of feed. And so they're way, way more efficient. And they're more, and so you actually get more total pounds. Now you have more animals, but you get more total pounds per acre off of several efficient ones than two great big steam engines. And I mean, there are cows right here in this county, I can tell you, there are cows that weigh over 2,000 pounds. And it's just, it's extremely, why? Well, the farmers, they brag about how big their calves are, right? But a big calf doesn't make you a penny if it costs too much to raise. But it's this hubris of, I'm going to brag about how big my calf is. No, I want to brag about how many pounds of nutrition I got off of an acre. That's what I'm actually getting paid for. So even farmers have bought into it and don't realize that they've been kind of shaped by the fabrication industry.
I first want to say to Wendy, I'll take a t-shirt and a turkey, please. I've already got one. Okay. So my question is, 60 years, right? That is a lot of dedication and a lot of success and I'm sure failure along the way. perspective, was your most proudest moment over those 60 years?
The question was, what was your proudest moment over those 60 years?
Probably the proudest moment was when Daniel wanted to take over. That was the proudest moment. You know, we can talk about regenerating soils and, you know, having whatever, better phenotype animals, whatever, you know, not using chemicals, those sorts of things. But the ultimate regeneration is human, is people. And we are right now, I'm sure many of you know this, we are now in a real tight spot on farmers, because the average farmer is now 60 years old, and in the next 15, according to Virginia Tech, sorry, JMU doesn't do these studies, right? According to Virginia Tech, in the next 15 years, half of all American agriculture equity is going to change hands. That's never happened in any civilization in history in peace. It's only happened in conquest. Now, I'm not saying we're getting ready to be conquested, don't misread me. All I'm saying is that if it is a peaceful transfer, it will be the first time in history that level of agrarian equity transfer has happened in peace. So we live in very interesting times, and so when I do media interviews a lot, things like that, say, what's your ultimate definition of sustainability? And my quick answer is, what's the next generation doing? Are they attracted to it, or are they disattracted to it? And that's not always just, you know, are you not using chemicals or not? It's about relationship. It's about affirming the kids. It's about letting the kids have autonomy and authority and not second guessing everything they do, letting them climb a tree and fall. You know, all of those elements, which is why I wrote family-friendly farming, because back then I saw that as a real key dimension.
Is it because you let them bring the rabbits in?
Yeah. So we, you know, we're big believers in child entrepreneurism. And we never paid an allowance. We don't think a kid should get paid for breathing. And we think, you know, if I may, as an elder here, may I say something that we believe very strongly that one of the problems we're having such adolescent launch problems today is because we have denied our children and young adolescents the legal freedom to interact meaningfully in the adult world. The things that kids used to do, fill the wood box, milk the cow, churn the butter, have a paper route, stock shelves. I mean, I'm thinking of, you know, things that kids used to do. Now they're all in the basement playing video games. And what happens is you get a very jaundiced view of how life works and what's important. And we see it in our stewards and apprentices. We love them to death. They're great people, but we have definitely seen over the last, we've been doing this for now 25 some years, and we've seen a definite erosion of expectations where if I'm going to do that, I'm going to get paid for it. Well, you know, who gets paid for cleaning the toilet at your house? There are things that we do because we're human, because if nobody does them, it's a stinky world, okay? And you don't get paid for that. You don't get paid for making your bed. You don't get paid for for doing the wash. You don't get paid for washing the dishes. Because if you don't wash the dishes, you got dirty dishes, and then you get sick, and you get blah, blah, blah. So, or you get rats and mice, whatever. The point is that we want our young people to understand there are things that you do because you're a member of this family, of this household, of the human race that are not money given. They're just responsible for being a human. Now, that being said, we want to incentivize Beyond that, entrepreneurial things that if you bring value into your life, beyond that, we want you to be compensated. And so, you know, for me, I know I got chickens when I was 10, and so all my years growing up, you know, my pocket money and income was from these chickens, and sold eggs and had garden and sold vegetables, things like that. Our own kids, Daniel got rabbits when he was 8, and Rachel, of course, girls are always quicker than guys, and Rachel, you know, started her business when she was about 5. She started making these little potholder looms, you know, and selling them. She's real artistic. She made pound cakes and zucchini bread. And, you know, when she was 8, and you know, had clients and patrons and stuff. And where I'm going is that both kids, when they hit 20 years old, had $20,000 in the bank from their own enterprises. That creates self-confidence. That creates personhood. One of the reasons young people don't know who they are, what they want to do, or what they're going to go in life is because they haven't had enough experiences in real life to determine what they're good at, what they're bad at, where their talents and gifts are, where their interests lie, except to be the top points getter on, you know, Angry Birds. And that does not affirm you as a person. What affirms you as a person is getting the pat on the back and saying, good job on, you know, such and such, nailing that board and you know, doing real things. And so anyway, it's a long topic, but you know, family-friendly farming is all about that, you know, that kind of thing. How to ride that tension between things that you do because you're a human and things that you get compensated for, and to appreciate the difference in the two, and to be incentivized on both.
Back quiet. Do you have a question? I cannot. Okay, great, thanks.
Yes, thanks.
Joel, I'm curious, you know, in trying to do everything within balance in nature, something got my chickens the other night, partially because my infrastructure wasn't ready. Very predictable, but I'm curious, do you try to eradicate predators or just protect your animals from predators and let predators be predators and not kill them?
The question is whether you try to eradicate predators or let them be predators, and also that your infrastructure wasn't ready. No, we never try to eradicate predators. As much as we try to live, you know, with them as much as possible, and generally we view wildlife as an asset, not a liability. We think that because of our farming, there should be more wildlife, more diversified wildlife, not less, in general. That being said, we do a lot of things to minimize predation. I'll just give you several. One is that we fence out the woods and the riparian areas so that we have a lot of marshy and forestal zones that are completely free of marauding cows, and that creates a soft duff, a lot of litter that supports moles and voles and squirrels and chipmunks and an active mammalian population that then feeds the carnivorous predators. We have designed the landscape so that those zones, if you will, penetrate all the fields. We don't want a field to be more than 200 yards from cover, so that we have these zones going in, so that there's always a place for the carnivorous predators to find something to eat, because they're pretty much opportunists. And then, you know, we graze with the cows around the chickens, so the grass is short. You know,
raccoons and possums and things like that tend to not like to walk in short grass because they can be seen, and a great horned owl will pick them up off the ground. And so short grass tends to, reduce that. So we don't run the chickens right up against, cover, or in long grass, we make sure that we either mow with the cows or mechanically to keep the grass right where the chickens are, very, very short. And then beyond that, we're there. One of the biggest problems in farming today is that 90% of them, if you go at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, nobody's home because they're all working in town to support their farm habit. And so I'm a huge proponent of, if you want to farm, let's figure out a way to farm full time. If you love it and you like it, let's be there full time. How do we do that? Okay? And if you're there full time, you're there when when stuff happens. And I know when I came back to the farm full time, one of the reasons that our little nest egg that Teresa and I had accumulated, we were living in the attic, driving a $50 car, living in the attic on $300 a month. But the reason that we were able to take that little $10,000 nest egg and stretch it into 2 years from one was because by being there, the slippage stopped. We were there when the beans needed to be weeded. We were there when the cow was calving, not an hour or two late when she already lost it. Those kinds of things. All that slippage that happens, that starts to reduce when you're actually in situ, on site. You're actually there. And so we are really big on, we need to repopulate the countryside with loving, ecological wound caressers. And the problem is that our culture does not emotionally and economically incentivize our frontline resource stewards. When's the last time you heard a rising senior go to the last conference with the school guidance counselor, and the guidance counselor says, "Wow, Mary, man, you got good grades. You are smart. Have you ever thought about being a farmer?" We laugh, but it's a tragic laugh, right? I mean, if we really want resource stewardship, we should be putting our best and brightest caressing our ecological wound rather than, the dropouts. And so it's a big, and the other thing is, we have guardian animals. We, dogs. We've had geese. We do those sorts of things. All that being said, sometimes you have to shoot, shovel, and shut up. And that's all I'll say about that.
We'll leave it there.
That's right.
Over here.
I'm curious that with the recent change in the governor, Democrats out, Republicans in, is that good for someone like you and what you do, or?
We're going to go into politics.
I think that siren with that question, it was probably apropos. That creates an emergency situation.
I'd follow.
The question is, what is the latest, the Tuesday race, election results? What does that mean? Look, everybody eats. Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, Greenies, Socialists, everybody eats. We want to feed everybody that loves authentic food. And so we certainly don't make a distinction in our customer base, in our collaborators, in what we don't ask them what their politics are. All I'll say is generally, we are, as a small business, desperate to see a smaller government. And generally, you cannot have thriving small business with thriving big government. To have thriving small business, you need smaller government. And so, whatever brings smaller government, I'm for it.
Well said, Joel. Well said.
Stay out of that line.
You did very well. And we've got a bunch of books about everything you do is illegal, so we're good on that. We are out of time. Thank you for that. I just
Joel
wanted.
for president! Joel for president!
Listen, thank you all for coming. I know you could have been anywhere here, tonight, but you chose to come here. We really honor you. Thank you, Mary Katharine. Thank you, brewery here, and WMRA. I'm just trying to rattle off. Thank you all, and you all for coming. It means a lot, and I hope this is a good first inaugural after the hiatus. And so now, I'm the blessing guy. All right, so now may all your carrots grow long and straight. May your radishes be large but not pithy. May tomato blossom end rot affect your Monsanto neighbor's tomatoes. May the coyotes be struck blind at your pasture chickens. May all of your culinary experiments be delectably palatable. May the rain fall gently on your fields, the wind be always at your back, your children rise and call you blessed, and may we all make our nest a better place to be inherited. God bless you.